King of vegetables, food of kings, shoots for goddesses.
Asparagus, tinged with ultramarine and rosy pink which ran from their heads, finely stippled in mauve and azure, still stained a little by the soil of their garden bed, a rainbow loveliness that was not of this world. I felt that these celestial hues indicated the presence of exquisite creatures who had been pleased to assume vegetable form. And they transformed my humble chamber pot into a bower of aromatic perfume.
What? Well, you heard the great writer. Asparagus pea is actually a thing. Oh, you didn't know it existed? Then stick with me, because today we are going to talk about Germany's white gold, these expensive edible flower shoots that are considered the king of vegetables, asparagus. Hey everyone, I'm Gabby Winkler, and you are watching Etymology, a series about the most interesting stories of the most ordinary culinary ingredients. And this time we will talk about another extremely delicious vegetable which I am personally obsessed with. It is also one of those that might make you stink a little bit more. So after the queen of the kitchen, the king of vegetables is on our plate, the mighty asparagus. Asparagus used to be categorized in the same plant family as garlic and onions, but recently it got its own category, Asparagaceae. The English name we use today comes from Greek asparagos, meaning spring or shoot up. There was an old English word for asparagus, earthnaphella, but it disappeared from the English language. So probably you know that there is white asparagus and green asparagus. But what is the difference? Actually, they are exactly the same plant. The only difference is how they are grown. White asparagus is grown in a dark environment, either underground or well covered, whereas the green version gets to soak up all the sunlight. Covering the white asparagus prevents it from producing chlorophyll, which is responsible for turning vegetables green. In terms of taste, the white spears have a slightly milder, sweeter flavor, whereas the green ones are a bit earthier and grassier. Asparagus was probably first cultivated in Eastern Mediterranean countries, in Egypt and the rest of Africa, and was really adored by the ancient Greeks and Romans. The plant was a delicacy and was often served with sauces and spices. In ancient Egypt, it was a sacred food and it was included in offerings to the gods. Bundles of asparagus tips were also found in the graves of rich Egyptians buried some 5,000 years ago. The earliest known written account of asparagus cultivation comes from the Greeks. In 200 BC, the Greek philosopher Theophrastus wrote about asparagus in his botanical works, noting that it grew best in sandy soil and the young shoots were the most delicious. It was considered the sacred plant of Aphrodite, with aphrodisiac properties. Hippocrates used it to treat diarrhea and urinary problems. The Romans enjoyed it as an entree or as a vegetable accompanying fish. There are a couple of ancient Roman recipes of asparagus in the De Re Coquinaria from the 2nd century AD, for example, asparagus pie or asparagus custard. According to legend, the Roman Emperor Augustus was obsessed with asparagus. He organized special military units to look for the fresh, tender shoots. And then, the fastest runners had to take the fresh asparagus spears into the frozen Alps for storage purposes. Archaeological evidence suggests that asparagus was also cultivated in other parts of the world around this time. In China, for example, asparagus was grown during the Han Dynasty and was used both for food and medicinal purposes. In the Middle Ages, asparagus sort of disappeared from European cuisine. Only French monks grew it in monasteries. It was mainly used as a medicinal plant. The root was cooked in water or wine, and the concoction was used to increase semen or stimulate libido. Do you wonder why? Well, it is a fast-growing shoot that looks like... Well, if you look at its shape, you might understand why it was associated with Venus and sexual desire. Fast forwarding to modern times, these connotations seem to inspire modern-day artists as well. There is an amazing surreal animation movie made by Susan Pitt that features asparagus. The movie became famous as it was showed as an opening short film to David Lynch's iconic Eraserhead during the legendary midnight screenings in New York and Los Angeles. Alright, now back to asparagus history. It was not until of the 16th century that they started using asparagus as a vegetable, and from that time on, it is frequently mentioned in herbal books. In 17th century France, Louis XIV was particularly fond of asparagus. Asparagus was so popular among French aristocrats that they had their own professional asparagus peelers to prepare the delicate vegetable for them. According to legend, Louis XIV loved asparagus so much that he declared it the king of all vegetables and built special greenhouses so that it could be grown anytime during the year. When he fell in love with Madame de Maintenon, his second secret wife, he had to come up with a new asparagus recipe to win her over. So he created one. The lady liked the recipe so much that she married the king immediately. Not because he was Louis XIV. No, obviously not. It was the recipe. For sure. If you thought this was a funny story, listen to this one. This is probably one of the most famous asparagus bundles in the world. This is Manet's Botte d'Asperges, bundle of asparagus. This painting was commissioned by Charles F. Rosset, who was a big asparagus enthusiast, and he wanted to pay 800 francs for this. But when he received it, the guy loved it so much that he sent 1,000 francs instead of 800. And what did Manet do? Being a witty guy, he quickly threw together a painting with a single asparagus on it and sent it to Charles with a note saying, "There was one missing from your bunch." Clever, huh? Talking about painted asparagus, the almost totally forgotten Dutch artist Adriaan Corte was perhaps the biggest master of asparagus art. He produced a bunch of exquisite still lifes of asparagus with different fruits and vegetables like strawberries, gooseberries, red currants, artichoke, and so on. So if it was so popular and expensive, what is this thing with asparagus piss? Apparently, asparagus can make your urine stink, but not for everybody, and not everybody can smell it. In 1702, the French botanist and chemist Louis Lemery wrote that asparagus can cause a filthy and disagreeable smell in the urine, as everybody knows. In 1781, Benjamin Franklin wrote a letter to the Royal Academy about farting, and he also mentions asparagus pea. Well, just like with garlic, again, it is our metabolism's fault that we start stinking after eating asparagus. Spears contain asparagusic acid, an odorless sulfurous compound that is metabolized in the body into sulfur, which is mainly responsible for the distinctive smell. It may be detected within 15 minutes after eating asparagus and may stay for several hours. Everybody who eats asparagus produces asparagusic acid, but not everyone is able to smell it. Some people seem to have developed different metabolic ways of breaking down asparagusic acid. The urine of these non-producers does not have an unpleasant odor. Other people, however, do produce asparagus urine, but cannot smell it. The question is, why? Several dedicated groups of scientists have studied this issue of asparagus urine for a long time. They must have been really obsessed, but the results are inconclusive. If you've ever experienced that unmistakable smell in the toilet after eating asparagus, you are not alone. Up to 50% of people can detect the smell. I am one of those. How about you? Anyways, there is a nation on this planet which doesn't care about the weird odor, and every spring celebrates the asparagus season with festivals and concerts. Restaurants only sell asparagus dishes, and they get very creative with them. These people are the Germans. They are obsessed with asparagus. During Spargelzeit, asparagus time, which starts sometime in April, Germans celebrate the harvest of white asparagus with Spargelfests or Spargelsamstags, which is Asparagus Saturday. The season ends exactly on June the 24th. And why are they obsessed with asparagus? It's actually a mystery.
So, come on Germany, what's all the fuss about your white asparagus?
Ich liebe Spargel.
Es schmeckt einfach gut und ist so ein Sommergefühl.
Frische kommt aus der Landwirtschaft. Ich sehe das Grüne ringsrum.
Frühling, Leichtigkeit, Abnehmen.
Das gehört dazu, zu der Jahreszeit.
Wenn die Saison ist, kann ich mich reinsetzen.
Ist halt eine Seltenheit, den gibt es halt nicht das ganze Jahr.
Er liegt nicht im Magen und wenn man Pipi machen geht, riecht's.
So if you are German and you love asparagus, please let me know in the comments. In some asparagus growing regions, different towns select a young woman to become their Spargelkönigin. In these communities, getting selected as this year's Asparagus Queen is a huge honor. The Asparagus Queen has a very busy schedule of press events and appearances, serving as the youthful embodiment of the newly arrived spring season. There is actually a very famous German song about young women, spring, asparagus, and
Veronika, 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 der Lenz ist da. Veronika, der Lenz ist da. Die Mädchen singen tralala. Die ganze Welt ist wie verhext. Veronika, der Spargel wächst. Ach du Veronika, die Welt ist grün. Drum lass uns in die Wälder ziehen. Sogar der Großpapa sagt zu der Großmama, Veronika, der Lenz ist da.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode about asparagus. Do you like asparagus? Which one? The green or the white one? Don't forget to let me know. And if you enjoyed these videos, you can subscribe to the channel here, so you won't miss our next episode about another spring delicacy, which is said to be the most perfect berry on earth, strawberry. The only problem is that it is not a berry at all. Interested? Find out more from the next episode on etymology. See you next time.